All right. So I'm mainly going to be presenting from over here, but I figured I'd stand up here in front first so you could all see me. Here I am. My name is Jeremy Gledhill. I've been with Nudon for about 3 years. I started in support, so some of you may know me from those days calling in with problems, and I would just be like, sorry, and just hang up the phone. Now I'm an account manager, which is still in the same realm as support, but I do more proactive stuff. So I do a lot of training now, and I try to call our customers at least once a year and make sure that they're happy. So if you get a call randomly and I'm like, hey, we're calling because we just want to see if you're happy, you can hang up the phone on me and be like, returning the favor, you know. So this class, in case you don't know, is the JusticeWeb configuration class. Anyone shocked by that? All right. If someone stands up to leave, I promise I won't be offended much. How many of you just attended the JusticeWeb thing in there? Show of hands. So did anyone not attend that? Okay. So a lot of this is probably going to be pretty familiar to what you just saw, except the connection will work, and we'll dive a little bit more into things. I mean, I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot. Like, if the connection doesn't work, I'm so sorry. I did jump through some hoops and got my own little wire this morning, so they had to register me on their internal network. Ooh, big deal. So anyways, hopefully we won't see any problems with that. Our Wi-Fi is always fun with these conferences because everyone has like 3 Wi-Fi devices that they bring with them, and who knows how we can support that. So JusticeWeb, since I think the majority of the people here do not currently have JusticeWeb or are not currently using JusticeWeb, I don't feel like it's going to be a huge help for me to get too deep into the nitty-gritties of JusticeWeb of, oh, you know, this is a specific little type of thing you can do here in this corner. I'm still going to kind of take it from a surface level. This is more, I would say, basic beginner JusticeWeb configuration. We can get into more nitty-gritty later if you guys have specific questions. Definitely call me or email me. We've done a few one-on-one demos with people, and we do have a demo online as well, recorded by, I think, me. If it's not me, then maybe we'll have to do one with me, so it's better. So what is JusticeWeb? What can it do? I'm going to be sitting there, sorry. Unless you want to present, you can. All right. No, you're fine. I'm a pretty shy person, so don't get me out of my comfort zone. So what can JusticeWeb do for your agency? How easy is it to configure? How easy is it to set up? Do I need to be a programmer? Do I need to understand how websites work? The answer to that question is no. They have made this really, really, really user-friendly. I would say even easier than writing JDA documents. So if you feel comfortable working in JDA, dragging the little fill points into your document, you should feel comfortable with configuring JusticeWeb, I would say on a surface level. Whoa, our power just, something just flickered up here. Yeah, the storm is brewing. Don't feel uncomfortable. I would say right off the bat, feel like you already know what you're talking about. Just pretend like I do, that you know what you're talking about, and then everyone will believe you. So what can you do with JusticeWeb? I know Derek kind of went over some of the main points. It basically started as an e-discovery download site, is kind of how it was born. Make packets available from JustWare through JusticeWeb. That's how it was born. Go on there, download your discovery packets. Then they started adding things that you can do publicly. So instead of logging in, you can actually do things without logging in, such as payments. You can look at reports. And then on the private side, you still have payments and reports, and then, of course, a bunch of other things you can do, such as inserting notes on cases, adding events on cases, looking at your cases, stuff like that. And so what is JusticeWeb then in terms of, why or who would be using JusticeWeb? Anyone that does not have internal access to JustWare may need access to JusticeWeb. So if you have employees internally that are accessing their cases through JustWare and they're thinking, oh, maybe we'll get JusticeWeb so they can access their cases from home, I'm not sure I would get JusticeWeb for that. JusticeWeb is more of people who are not logging into JustWare to work on their cases. So people outside of our agency, attorneys outside of our office, private attorneys, police officers that need reports or things from our JustWare database. Anyone that is not logging into our JustWare system but needs access to information, needs to be able to submit documents to JustWare, things like that. There's obviously other ways of gaining access to JustWare if you already have your own JustWare login. So, if you're interested in having JustWare available to you outside of the office, that may be a conversation you can have with your IT department, because it is definitely available. I mean, I'm sure a couple of you already have that option here, working on your JustWare back at home while you're here. So that's kind of just a brief overview of JusticeWeb. I do welcome any questions that you have while I'm presenting. Don't feel like you're going to bump me off my groove because you have a question. If you have a specific question about something that I'm showing you, let me know. And I may not even see you. I'm going to be facing this way, so just blurt it out. I'm fine with people blurting things out because I blurt things out all the time, such as boo. You can boo me if you want. I probably deserve it.
Okay, give us the lowdown on your picture then.
This picture? So this is my wife and my child. I only have one. This is Maddie. I brought her around yesterday about lunchtime, but she came right when classes started, so not very many people got to see her. But she is 19 months now. So she was 6 months in that picture, and she is awesome. And I'm sure she's a handful. My wife, she wants breaks. So I'm sure any mother feels the same way. I'm with her all day long. I have to talk to a 19-month-old all day long. Give me a break. All right, so JusticeWeb. Dun 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 dun. So this is my own personal JusticeWeb that I've been making since JusticeWeb was released, basically. I like to kind of tinker with it on my own. I recommend to anyone who's looking to either purchase JusticeWeb or has purchased JusticeWeb to make an environment to tinker in. I'm sure Mike can attest to that. If you have a tinkering environment, you can try all sorts of things. Try putting this here or that there or editing this text or whatever until you get it exactly the way you want it. And if you can't get it the way you want it, then contact someone at Nudon and say, is this even possible? I can't even get it to work this way. And maybe we can come up with some viable options for you.
How does the JusticeWeb license fit into JusticeWeb?
So there are no licenses currently for JusticeWeb. So when you buy JusticeWeb, you basically have unlimited accounts that you can create for users. And that's currently the way it is. So when you buy JustWare, you have to buy licenses for each JustWare user. When you buy JusticeWeb, you can just create accounts for anyone who needs an account for JusticeWeb. And that's currently the way it is. Good question. So when you buy JusticeWeb, when you do, because I'm going to sell all of you on it, you're going to leave here thinking, man, this is worth it. You'll have a site license is what we call it, typically. So everyone can use it without worrying about exceeding your licenses. Good question. So use a training environment or a test environment is what I would recommend. And sometimes, depending on the situation, we can give you access even before you purchase JusticeWeb. Sometimes we have our own that you can access if you just want to tinker with it. I want to try a few of our workflows and see if our workflows will work in JusticeWeb, before we even start talking about purchasing it. So that's step one. Step two is think about what you want your workflows to be. So what do you want to use JusticeWeb for, and what do you want those workflows to be in JusticeWeb? I want so-and-so to be able to download a discovery packet. I want so-and-so to be able to create a new case in JustWare, and I want this person to be able to add a note. And then I want the public people to be able to access this report. If you can start coming up with these scenarios of if we can do A, B, C, and D, how do we accomplish each of those things? That's a good place to start as well with JusticeWeb. And the more you can do with it, obviously, the more help it's going to be for your office. So if you're only getting it to do one thing and it can do 100 things, maybe you can have it do 10 instead of 1. So those are the 2 places I would start. All right, so JusticeWeb. Let me pull up my iPad. I made a little outline for myself. So I think the first place I wanted to start was just talking about general navigation. Where is JusticeWeb and how does it relate to JustWhere? And so JusticeWeb is typically an externally deployed website. That means, if someone did a Google search, there's a good chance Google found it, and it's available to anyone in the world. They can go out there and they can pop up your JusticeWeb. That would be externally deployed, and that's the main purpose of JusticeWeb, is everyone can access it. It's not internal to your network. I think some places are using it internally, which would be an internal deployment. So if you Googled it, it wouldn't be available. Just like JustWhere is typically internal. You leave the workplace and it's not available anymore at your house. So that does introduce some specific server configuration. It's typically going to have its own server, or it's going to be mixed with other any other websites that your agency may be hosting. So if you have a city website that you're already hosting for the city, you may decide to host JusticeWeb on that same server. Typically a protected server, one that's outside of your network, so that we have some secure things put in place. And I haven't had any discussions yet with anyone looking to buy JusticeWeb where they haven't felt like we can meet their security needs. So if you want to have any discussions about security, let us know. We can get people together that are smarter than me, that know about the whole firewall, reverse proxy, buzzwords that I don't even know how to configure. We can get someone together and make you feel comfortable that JusticeWeb will be secure. If someone does compromise your system, they're not going to be able to access things that they're not supposed to.
Can you host multiple instances of JusticeWeb on one server?
Yes. Good question. So if you're an agency that has multiple, such as Oklahoma, if you have multiple districts or whatever using JusticeWeb, you could have one server that would host a couple JusticeWebs websites. So then where does it reside in JustWhere? In JustWhere, it resides under System Administration. So if I scroll down here under Administrative Tools, we have our JusticeWeb button here. Once it's configured, once it's deployed, basically set up on your server, people can hit it externally, etc. This is basically going to be the only place you'll ever come to. You'll come into JustWhere, just like you come in to configure JustWhere currently. I want to edit things in JustWhere. You could edit things in JusticeWeb right in JustWhere. And they've made it very, very user-friendly. So if I click on JusticeWeb here, talking more about navigation, we have a couple options in here. We have our request queue, our user account management, our request management, reports, server configuration, fee configuration, and our audit log. I'm just going to briefly talk about what each of these are so that you know what's available. So the request queue, Derek briefly went over the fact that you can have items from JusticeWeb sit in a queue. A good example of that is when someone requests an account. So if someone wants to gain access to JusticeWeb, typically that request for an account will sit in the queue until someone approves that account. It's not something that happens automatically. And anytime someone requests an account, they automatically gain access to JusticeWeb. So that's what this request queue is. If I come in here, I don't think I have anything queued. Nope, so this is completely blank. This is where things will reside that you don't want to happen automatically. You want to review it first. So I mentioned before, you can submit events on cases. You can submit notes on cases. You can submit files on cases directly to cases. But let's say you want to review what's going on in the case before it actually appears in JustWhere. That's what this queue is for. So you can set up specific requests to automatically be approved, where it doesn't sit in your queue, it goes right to the case. Or you can have it sit in the queue where it's waiting for your approval. This goes back to the workflow that I was talking about. What are your workflows? Does that annoy the heck out of you that you have to come in here and approve something? Or how do you know if something is here waiting to be approved? We've definitely had a couple cool instances where we've put queues on cases. So if you go on a case, you can see if anything is waiting on that case to be approved instead of coming into this request queue. So you can have a case-specific queue if you want. Let's say you want to know if something is sitting in the queue. You can make a business rule that says, send me an email if someone requests an account. That way I know I got to go to the queue and approve them or reject them if it's someone we know is not supposed to have access to JusticeWeb. So workflow-wise, there's a lot that we can do. Sending emails to yourself. When something is approved, you can have an email sent out to someone saying, hey, by the way, this note was just approved for your case. You might want to go check it out. When people submit documents, you can have an email automatically sent out saying, hey, this document is now available for such and such. Boise City's not here, but they've done a lot of cool workflows with JusticeWeb, with their discovery specifically, where if someone needs to request audio on discovery, they can request audio. It sends an email to someone in their agency saying, hey, they need to have audio. As soon as they add audio in JustWare automatically sends an email back to the attorney saying, the audio is now available. So the whole system is automated in terms of they clicked on request audio, someone got an email. As soon as they added the audio, they got an email back saying the audio you requested is now available. So, think broad. There's a lot of cool things you can do. Don't think narrow like, oh, they can just download. That's all they can do, just download a file. We can fire off business rules, all sorts of things based off of what you do in JusticeWeb. So that's the request queue. And we will see things populate in there as we go through this. User account management. This was just brought up a second ago. How do we manage licenses in JusticeWeb? There aren't licenses, but you do have to manage who has access to JusticeWeb. And the way that you manage your access is through this account management page. This shows we have, Bart Simpson and Darth Vader and Tony Stark. They have access here to JusticeWeb. We can see what their username is. They set the username themselves. We, of course, can't see what their password is, but we can expire their password if we need to. That'll force them to create a new password. We can see the last time they logged in to JusticeWeb. So we created a random record here, and looks like that's never been accessed before. This is where you manage everyone that has access to log into JusticeWeb. And you link them to name records in JustWare. So you're thinking, where does the connection come from? They have a name record in JustWare. You link their username in JusticeWeb to that name record in JustWare. So an example of that, I'm Jeremy. I have a name record in JustWare. I'm involved on a bunch of cases with that name record in JustWare. I'm going to link the username of Jeremy to my name record in JustWare. And now when I log in as Jeremy, it knows, hey, this is the Jeremy Gledhill that's involved on these 15 cases. And it'll show those 15 cases right away because it knows it's the same person.
An automatic link, or is that something?
That's something you can set up automatically. And I haven't done a lot of that because I think most places I've talked to don't want it to be automatic. But you can set it up automatically. I know with our internal system we use, it does an automatic thing. So, good question. If you want your accounts to be automatically accepted. Derek also talked earlier that there are things that you can do without making accounts. So if you're thinking about some more public access things instead of having to have people sign in, you can make different requests available publicly. Creating new cases in JustWare without logging in. If you have a form, where people are starting new cases, you can do that through not even logging in. With JusticeWeb?
Yeah.
JusticeWeb is not integrated with the domain, but the configuration is. So there are a few hoops. I know you're talking about security back there, Captain Configuration Security. We can definitely have, Chris Burbank. You might want to grab him too again. He's the one I typically grab because he's like, oh yeah, port 573 and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, great, did you understand that? Great, you guys are on the same page. I don't know. That's great. I'm glad you figured it out. I'm not that technical. I have no idea how the port is passing through the whatever, through the place and the thing and the... I just know, hey, it's working. Congratulations. Good question, though. So there are some domain aspects, especially with the file transfers. So you may get around that depending on what features you're using in JusticeWeb. Not everything requires domain access.
The two things that require domain access are documents and financials.
There you go.
So
Documents and financials. And who knows?
We're working on that.
I was going to say, who knows how long it's going to, yeah, who knows how long it's going to.
I don't think it's in the plan, but we're thinking about how to fix that. So that is on the docket. I don't know when.
You've been actively developing JusticeWeb, right?
Yes.
Bam! There's our developer right there.
Is that one thing that the username there in that account manager will never be their domain user account. That is, it's a separate, so just don't want to follow up with the question. That is not their domain account.
Yeah.
It's a separate security group that is not domain credentials there. So if I log into JustWare with the domain/username, you never log into JustWare with domain/username.
Great point. Yeah, exactly. You're not using your domain to log into JusticeWeb. Everyone understands that, right? You're all like, domain, yeah. Active Directory, bam. Moving on. Sure, the Active Directory files with the rotary girder and the matrix of the mainframe. Request management. I keep using the word request. Requests are basically any of the buttons that you're clicking on in JusticeWeb. I want to submit a case. That's a request. I want my own account. That's a request. I want to download Discovery. That's a request. Anything that you're doing with JusticeWeb, the buttons you're clicking and how you're interacting with JusticeWeb is a request. So I keep throwing that word out here. And we'll come right back to this. So I'm not going to dive too much into this. I've got a couple requests already in here. We'll spend some time in this pretty soon, but this is where you're setting up all those buttons. Report management. Derek went over this pretty quickly in the presentation. This is where you link your reports, your current reports in JustWare to JusticeWeb. This blows my mind. I think this is awesome. Previously, we never had this capability to make your reports that are available in JustWare available right away in JusticeWeb with just like 2 clicks. Now, if I had a red flag, I would wave it as well, because don't make a report available that's confidential. You know, like, you might make something available you're not supposed to. So think twice. You know, look at the report, dive into what information the report is showing. If you're making it available publicly, you may want to contact Nudon and say, can we write this report and take out, you know, all this extra information, because we don't know, if people are supposed to have access to that, or we just don't want them to have access to that. Especially with public reports, red flag. Don't make, specific reports available publicly that people aren't supposed to have access to. But it's great. I'm not saying you're never going to use it, because I'm thinking everyone's going to use reports. Reports is going to be like a really big one, I think.
Can you restrict access to case involved parties?
Yes.
Through a report?
Well, to any information involved in the case.
Yeah. Definitely. Good question. So there's 3 types of reports. I'm going to cover them right now because in terms of time, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back to this. We have public reports, we have private reports, and we have case-specific reports. A public report basically means you don't have to log in. So anyone that has access to your website has access to that report. Private report is based on your involvement on the case. So if I log in as a police officer, I may have a court calendar report that I have access to. Now, if I log in as an attorney, I may not have access to that report. I may have access to some docket report for my docket for the day. So based on your involvement on a specific case is what reports you have available. And then case-specific reports have to do with when you are looking at a case in JusticeWeb. So these would be based off of your case ID or off of your court number, basically. What information is there available for the case? You might be able to find a way through like a private report, but there's no way to pass like just a name ID currently. The case-specific report is based off of case ID. We don't have any like name-specific reports. I don't know if they're going to make any name-specific functionality.
I don't know.
If he doesn't know, then it's probably. So if I look at permissions here, notice we've got 2 snap-ins. This is where you set your permissions. So notice this case summary report, who has access? Everyone, all these involvements have access. So if I say, hey, I only want the prosecuting attorneys to have that case summary report, if the judge logs into JusticeWeb or if police officer logs into JusticeWeb, they won't have access to that report. So like I said, it's always involvement-based. So going back to, I link myself, Jeremy, I have a name record in JustWare. I'm involved on cases. I have specific involvement types on those cases. It's those involvement types we're talking about. So it's on specific cases. And when I log into JusticeWeb here, you'll see that I'm involved as a couple different people. So here I'm involved as a prosecuting attorney. Down here I'm involved as a police officer. So I wear many hats. I'm an attorney and a police officer. So it's all based off of involvement type. Any questions about reports? Because I don't think I'm going to come back to it. We're going to run out of time. All right. Good. All right, server configuration. This is typically something you will set and forget. Set it and? Yeah, Ronco. Anyways. So there are a few things you may come in here in the future to adjust, but most of the things you won't adjust. If they create a new email, what type do you want that to be? This is kind of where you set the defaults for different types across to JustWare or JusticeWeb. I'm trying to find it here. This is where you also set up what involvement types have access. And where am I looking here? Close to the top. Oh, here we go. It was right here. So who has access? Currently police officers and prosecuting attorneys. So if I'm involved as a judge on a case and I'm involved as a police officer on a case, when I log in to JusticeWeb right now, I'm only going to see the police officer cases because we are currently not allowing any involvements of judge. So if someone approaches you and says, I'm missing like 4 or 5 of my cases, you can go and see what they're involved in. They might be like legal secretary instead of paralegal or something involved on the case. It's like, oh, we're only allowing legal secretaries right now. We need to change your involvement type so that you now have access to that specific case through JusticeWeb.
And this is actually a way for you to configure multiple JusticeWeb instances and expose one of them to judges, one of them to police officers, and you can configure them differently based on the involvement in the cases. You can have different icons displayed on the website depending on who it is that's logging, who you configured it as.
Great point. And typically you're not wearing multiple hats. So the police officer will log in and it'll work one way. Prosecuting attorney will log in and it'll work another way. Great point.
So on that page there, it says 1 of 1 up there. So if I wanted the different settings for different people, I could create a whole nother set of rules for whichever group.
Exactly.
Not separate rules,
Well,
separate websites.
Separate websites.
Separate, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it'd be a completely separate connection.
Okay.
And that goes back to the can you install multiple JusticeWebs?
Right.
Great point. You also set up your payment portal settings. That payment portal information, if you are taking payments, comes from your payment provider. So we have Plug and Pay and Mercury Payments currently. I'm sure it's going to continue to grow with who is available. But you set up an account with them. They give you this information. Like Derek mentioned, when payments happen, you don't have to worry about any of the security with that. That's why we've done it through third-party companies. They handle all the security. They are compliant with all of the security standards with handling credit cards, etc. So when you set this up and when someone makes a payment, it goes through their payment provider and then it comes back to JusticeWeb saying, hey, the payment went through. And then in JustWare you can see they made a payment. And we'll play with that.
PayPal support?
Not currently. I don't know if Plug and Pay has any of that.
I'm not familiar with Plug and Pay very much.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it either. The rumor is Plug and Pay has multiple options, whereas Mercury Payments just has like the one.
One of the things we're working on next is to actually open that up, have sort of like an API for payment portals.
Woo-hoo.
So it's going to be, you're going to be able to use a lot more portals in the near future.
Yeah, exactly. Mercury Payments was the first one. They just barely added Plug and Pay just like a month ago, and they're growing that. So I'm sure the more people that ask, the faster it'll be done. That's kind of how it works.
Is there any cardholder information in the database at all for any amount of time?
No, we don't hold any payment information besides a reference number that comes back from the payment provider that says, this was the payment reference number. And then you'd have to contact Plug and Pay or contact Mercury Payments if there was some issue. But it's mainly just a confirmation. And then, of course, when you set up an account with them, they forward you the money. You know, they set it up with your bank or whatever to get the actual money. So.
Is the cost for the third-party provider included in the cost for JusticeWeb?
No, you set that up separately.
So it's cost individual.
Well, it's between you and them, really. I think that most payment providers have like some percentage. So if you use, you know, so-and-so, they charge 2%. If you use them, they charge 3% or whatever. Typically, whenever you use those types of services, they just have some percentage. And from what I've heard, they're flexible depending on volume, I think. So if you think you're going to have like 1 million charges in a year, they may be like, oh yeah, we'll lower the percentage down a little bit, you know. But don't hold me to that because I've never set it up. But we could definitely get you in touch, I think, with some people that have. All right. Web content. This is where you can configure your home page, where you can configure your sidebar, and where you can configure your support message. Notice it says it's in HTML. Derek showed you a little bit earlier how you can make things look differently. So when I said this is really, really easy for users, this is probably one of the areas that's not. So, but it is always, it's typically one of those things that you set it and forget it kind of a thing. You're not changing your web page every morning. Oh, let's put today's temperature out on the web page today. Man, that would be awful. You had to go in there and type that in every morning. But let me just show you real quick. Let me sign out. So because I have those fields aren't filled in, this is all just canned JustWare text. But if I come in here to JusticeWeb and I type, let's do like a bold, or let's do header 1. Hello world. Do you have to close headers?
Yes.
Hey, look, it all disappeared because now it knows something's in there to display. So there's a lot you can do with embedding of your own stuff on here and changing the site to look differently.
Is there a size limitation on that field?
I don't think there is.
I know there was a button rich editors.
Yeah, so instead of typing it in like tiny, you basically, it's just a standard text editor. Anyone who is not familiar with making web pages, but you feel like you might get handed this, W3 Schools is like a great place to learn. Do you not agree?
I would agree.
I agree. I think anyone that's used W3 Schools to learn things, it's great. You can test it out right on their web page. It shows you how to bold things, how to format things, how to... Yeah, Ben learned last night on W3 Schools.
And then you can make sure
And it's free.
their requirements for each
Exactly. So yeah, so this is where you can configure that. I'm not going to go much more into that. Time constraints here, time constraints. Let's take this back out so it looks pretty again. Yeah, boo, I want to see more.
To heck with lunch, let's just keep.
To heck with lunch, yeah, does everyone agree? Let's just skip lunch. Everyone starts leaving. All right, I think I saved that. Did I save that when I left? All right, cool. As if it matters. It matters to me. It's my chest environment. Fee configuration. This relates to specific fees on requests. So when we talk about taking money through JusticeWeb, let's talk about that on a broad point here real quick. How can you take payments and where do you take payments in JusticeWeb? So how, we still have the public side and the private side. That's all there really is to JusticeWeb. Public side is you don't log in, private side is you do log in. On the public side, Derek demonstrated pretty quickly that you can find a case using a last name, using a court number, see how much is available to pay, and currently you can pay that right on the public side. You don't have the option currently to say how much you want to pay. It is the full-on amount. It's all or nothing currently on the public side. What you do have the option to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you have this option, is to specify specific obligations that you want to be available. So if someone is paying restitution only online, like that's all they pay online, and I think that's probably the opposite. Most people have to pay restitution in person or something. You can say the obligation of restitution is what they're paying online. Everything else they have to come in or they have to make other arrangements. So you can make that based off of obligation. I haven't heard any boos, so I think that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
I know I've messed with it, but I haven't messed with it for a while. So although it's all or nothing, currently it's all or nothing, you can say these are the specific obligations they can or can't pay through JusticeWeb and narrow down that money to the specific obligations. That is on the public side. On the private side, you actually have more options. And I actually have some fees to pay. So here's the public payment side. Derek demonstrated a little bit where you can find a case, and I think I have one in here. Simpson. Type in your test 1, 2, 3. So here's Lisa Simpson. She owes $500. I can do the whole pay and submit thing, go through and make my payment. If I sign in, I have a payments button up here. So notice I still have my public payment button, but now I have a new one called payments. And this shows how much I owe as a person. So Jeremy Gledhill owes a certain amount of money. I can see the fines I've paid, a little account summary up here of what I've paid and what I owe. It shows I'm past due, and I can make a payment. And this actually gives me the option and this is configurable, so you don't have to make it this way if you don't want it to be. You can say just pay it all. But I can say how much I want to pay, or if I want to pay, what brings me up to current, or whatever. So that's currently on the public side.
This is by case ID?
This is the person who's logged into JusticeWeb.
So if they've got multiple cases, they'll
So this would display everything. Yeah. So this is just like if you're taking a payment on a name record in JustWare. If you went to my name record in JustWare currently, you'd see I am $20 past due.
Jeremy, are you saying this will display the cases and the amounts due?
This shows what you have paid. This is your payment history.
For each case,
For each payment.
for each payment.
Yep. So if I made payments outside of JusticeWeb or inside JusticeWeb, I could see the payments I've made. If you need other reports available, there are, you could make financial name summary reports available if you wanted to see the whole breakdown. I don't know if I think they were changing something with that. I know they've been enhancing the payment stuff lately, so that might look different in the future. Question?
How about a third-party payer, like I'm an attorney, I've got 27 clients in your court, and I want to pay some of their fines today. Can I sign in as the attorney? Will I see all of my clients' cases, and am I able to make payments towards their case, or do I have to be the defendant?
That would typically be like the public side. So you'd be finding their cases, because this is currently tied to you, like everything to do with you, because you logged in. If you don't log in, you'd probably be finding their stuff to pay, like I just demonstrated, and paying that way. And they may enhance, like this stuff is like always enhancing.
The specific use case you mentioned, we haven't coded it down.
Yeah. When you log in, it's
You have to
specific.
individually go find the cases. It's not going to list all the cases that potentially would be involved. This is for the payments that I owe, not necessarily the payments that my clients owe.
But
If you had their login information, I guess you could.
you set up my role as the attorney for the defendants, you could empower my role to access their payment history.
Well, no. Because it's all tied to them. Like the obligations are tied to that person. So this is only showing for you instead of showing for them. you'd have to log in as them. So you'd have to have a login for each of them instead of logging in as you and seeing the information. You could probably get a report to show what they owe if you log in, but you wouldn't be able to take a payment for each of those cases that way. You probably have to do it the public way.
What about multiple collecting agencies? Like we have bad checks and then we have restitution. And so when we take a payment under a name file, we have to select the correct collecting agency to even show the obligation. Is that doable through?
I think that's how you set up what obligations are available, I'm assuming. I don't know. I think you'd have to set a default collecting agency on your obligation so that it goes to the right account. Is that what you're worried about, is the account, or showing what obligations are available?
It's actually going to stop by collecting agencies. So if you have two collecting agencies, both of those will show on this screen with the amount that you need to pay to each of those collecting agencies. And then you would have the pay option underneath each of those to expend it.
Okay. So
Jed's been in the thick of this out in Guam lately. So, yeah. Good question.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry, we're like, I knew an hour wouldn't be very long. Good questions, though. Way better than Derek. Right? Am I right? All right. So fee configuration, like I was mentioning, so what you can do, pay publicly, pay privately. Paying for your Discovery when you download Discovery, you can assign specific fees to specific documents. You can assign specific fees to specific requests. So I have a request currently in here of request audio. Remember, Boise has the audio request option. If you want to charge them to request audio, you can say that $5, you have to pay $5 every time you request audio. So it's not tied to a document, it's tied to a request. And you can set up tax percentages and things related to the fee that you associate to this request. And we haven't even dived into request yet. So let's move on, because the request is kind of the meat of JusticeWeb. The audit log is a report that helps you see what's going on in JusticeWeb. And I was just going to show it to you here real quick. So you can see based off of date, based off of request type, and I have nothing in here, so that's great. I don't think I've ever used this report. What is the main purpose of the audit log? Just to see if there's an issue with a specific request?
I am not familiar with this feature, so sorry.
It's a report. So if you need it to be, oh look, hers is all prettied up over here. It shows all of her requests and if they're accepted or queued or rejected.
Yeah, like if we have new attorneys requesting a login, it says whether we rejected it or we accepted it.
And I guess it makes sense. Derek did mention that we capture that data. You know, we're capturing what happens in JusticeWeb. So if you need to know what requests were rejected or when they were rejected or why they were rejected.
Where does that capture data reside?
In the JustWare database. All of this is in the JustWare database. There's not a specific JusticeWeb database. Yep. All right. So that is like it with JusticeWeb. From here, it's like just configuring JusticeWeb, which is what this class is, and we've got like 15 minutes. All right. So I said we'd spend some time in request management. This is where you will typically spend the most time in JusticeWeb, is in request management. This is where you say what the buttons are, what they do, where they go, set up your fees, etc. So let's just give like a broad overview of what we're looking at, and then we'll dive into exactly the lines here. So these are where we create our requests. Notice I have an account request, a link to Nudon, a notes request, submit document request. Where do these all reside in JusticeWeb? Where they reside is dependent on your code type. So an account request, hey, that's an account request. A link to Nudon, that is a non-case specific request. A note, hey, that's a case specific request. We are assigning these. These aren't automatically assigned. You're saying that the note is a case specific request and that request audio is a case specific request. Discovery download is a download request. So that's a request to download something. Insert case request, etc. So let's talk about payment requests, public payment requests. Let's talk about where these show on JusticeWeb. So where does the account request show? Where does the non-case specific request show? If I log in here and I sign out, hey, here is our account request. So if you do a code type of 1 account request, this is where you're putting that button. If I take that account request out, is there a way to just expire it? I don't want to kill it. Well, I guess I'll kill it. Why not? Who cares? Oh, I don't want to kill it. I have to merge it. I don't want to merge it. All right. I was just going to show you how it disappears. I'll show you with other ones. If I took that request out, this button would disappear. Now no one can make accounts because I don't have an account request. This report button, that is linked to that configuration where we talked about reports. If there aren't any reports available, that button's not going to show. This public payment, if you haven't made public payments available, that public payment's not going to show. Now when you log in, let's talk about case specific and non-case specific. So remember we had that link to new Dawn. We had that insert new case. This was a non-case specific request. This was an insert new case specific request. The reason why these are over here and not over here is because these are case specific requests. So you want this note to be with this case. You want this request audio to be with this case. So, thinking about what goes with cases and what doesn't go with cases. If someone needs to send a request to change their email address, is that going to be a case-specific request or a non-case specific? Hey, you guys actually responded. I thought it would just be like crickets. Non-case specific, exactly. Because you're not asking to request an email address change on a specific case. Most likely, you're saying my email address in the system needs to be changed. That would be a non-case specific request. So if we go back to just where real quick, we can see kind of how these buttons line up. I've got notes, submit document, request audio. Those are my only 3 case-specific requests. When I come here, hey, work with the case. That's where my 3 case-specific requests are. Now when I come to downloads, I can see I have a download available. That relates back to my download request. Payment requests relate back to the payment pages that I've got. So the public payments or the payment requests. And then the insert case request, where was that one? Right here. Specific for an insert case request type. The whole point of this is so JusticeWeb knows how to handle the request, basically. If you are doing an insert case request, it knows that, hey, this is going to insert a new case in JustWare. This inserts data into the case directly. Notice over here we can also select our JusticeWeb server. This relates back to how we make specific requests for different website deployments. So if you do have one website for police officers and one website for attorneys, that's where you say this request is for that specific website. Remember we talked about queuing. Do we want it to sit in the queue? Do we want it to be automatically approved? Notice most of mine are automatically approved, but I do have a couple that are sitting in queue, like a submit document. If I don't want that document to come right into my filing cabinet, I want to review it first, I'm setting this one to be queued. We have a couple of approval options here. These approval options happen in JustWare when you submit a request. So I did this with request audio. So when I have an audio request, when someone submits an audio request, it puts an event on the case of request audio. So when that request goes through, an event shows on the case of request audio. If you are doing collecting fees, this audio request also has a $5 fee associated with it. That's where you'd put the fee associated with this request. And you would link it to a non-collectible financial. So if you wanted like a specific non-collectible financial type associated with that request, you can create one. So you can write reports or whatever based off of audio requests. And this all goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning. What is your workflow? Where do you want the information to be in JustWare? How do you want that process to work? Do you want them to pay $5? Do you want an email to be sent out? Do you want an event to be put on the case? Do you want, it all comes back to what your workflow is. Do you want it to make coffee? You hit the coffee make request, and it adds an event on the case which fires off a business rule that connects to some API that fires off your coffee maker, and and you have now successfully made a cup of coffee using JusticeWeb. I want to see someone do that. Someone make coffee with JusticeWeb. I know you probably are going to do that now. You seem like you've got too much time. So pages. The page is related to what we see when we click on the request. So when I click on Request Audio, the Request Audio page comes up. When I click on Submit Document, a Document Submission page comes up. So let me show you real quick, and we've already clicked on a couple of these. When I click on Request Audio, notice I have a box here that says Audio Request Information, and we'll talk about these right now. How do we configure these pages? And look, it's got a fine associated with it. That seems like a little expensive, huh? All right, so if we come back to our request configuration, notice the next snap in here is page configuration. Dun, dun, dun. What a great segue. This has all the pages we've created. So the Add Notes page is here. The Document Submission page is here. This is where you can say, what you want submitted, what you want. You can put just text out here, giving information, saying, notice when you download this discovery, you're not allowed to share with anyone, or we're going to lock you up for 5 years, or whatever you want to do. I'm sure that's probably exactly the terminology you're going to put on there. So you link your pages that you create here to your requests. And notice you can link multiple pages to a request. And I don't think I have an example of that. I should have made an example of that.
How do you set the order?
So the order would be what your next page is. So you could make a whole loop here. And we do this internally with JusticeWeb when we actually use JusticeWeb to submit our reimbursement requests. So when we travel, we use JusticeWeb to say, pay us money. And the way we do that is we have a loop, and we say, attach receipt, next receipt, attach receipt, next receipt. Once you've submitted all the receipts you need, you hit done, and it'll submit. So you can say, the next page is page 3, the next page is also page 3, until they hit submit. So you can say, this one does not allow submit on this page because they need to go to the next page.
The first page goes on to page 1?
Yeah. And you can come up with some awesome forms based off of what...
I have another one. So like on the notes, go ahead and go to your notes request and add another page.
Okay. You should be teaching this class, man. Should we just add case status? I don't even know what this page is. Let's add request audio. Sure. And we'll say this one allows submit. Oops. I did not mean to order like that. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah.
Okay. We're like mind melding. Oops. I think that's right. Let's look at it. Do we do that on the notes one? All right, here we go.
No, you missed the next page. The next page needs to be 2 on the add notes.
Oh, that's what you were saying. You're right. It doesn't make sense for it to teach the teacher. There we go. So now we've got a next page here.
So in this case, you would add a note, then you go to the next page, and then it would be add audio request information. This is kind of a funny example because there's no audio to actually download, but there would be that's the request.
Yeah.
So you can queue up multiple request pages. That's what that does.
This makes it so you don't have to click the request like 10 times. Like with our receipts. Back to the whole idea of submitting receipts. If we had like a submit receipt button, submit receipt 1, okay. Submit receipt 2, okay. Like clicking that same thing over and over again. If there's a loop of things, you can create a loop. Or you can just create a workflow of first you type this in here, then hit next, then type this in, then hit next, kind of a workflow as well.
I think on our receipts, we actually have 3 request pages. So one is like basic information. Then you click next, and then it says add receipt. And then when you click next, it just adds a new receipt. So it just loops
Yeah.
the add receipt pages until you click it.
So much you can do. All right. So this is, let's go back up, where you configure your pages. Let's just start configuring some pages real quick in the last 5 minutes we've got. So let's say we want to configure that, that notes one we kept looking at. Insert note for this case. We've got this add field snap in. We can add fields. This is a case specific request. Remember, insert case request, so we need to use these case fields. You can use some of the miscellaneous fields as well. One of the big issues I've noticed when training customers on JusticeWeb is they think, oh, if I put a phone number in here, that's going to, magically put this phone number on the case. Like, where's that phone number going to go? Just because this field's available to drag in here doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work with your workflow.
Go ahead and drag that back in, Jeremy. You'll see the little yellow icon right there. That's telling you that it's not able to save the data.
Exactly. And you can, you become pretty familiar with this as you're building pages. Why would you put a phone number on a, case-specific request? So let's say we want to add a note, and we also want to add a charge. This is the one that that Derek was showing. Notice we have all these fields. This all comes from just our charge here. So if we look at charge in JustWare, we have our occurred and notes field and type. They just need to fill out these, or you can say which ones are available or which ones aren't available. So we could say the occurred date, they need to put in an occurred date, or they don't need to put in an occurred date. We can make that not visible, or we can make that required so they can't go on without putting an occurred date. We can say what charges are available. Let's do my favorite. Fighting the honey badger. And then you can, you can reposition these if you want. So if we want the notes field to be the next field, we can reposition that here. We can hide any of the other fields we don't want to see. Charge is a big one. That's why I chose charge, because there's so many fields for charge. If I chose something like case notes, there's just like one. If we look at the field properties to the left, we can see what the field properties are for that specific field we're looking at. So for this notes field, I can say what note type it is. It's a case note type, or we can let them choose. I only have one note type. So if we save this, let's just see how it looks in JusticeWeb. Probably looks great. Doesn't look like a big jarbled mess at all. There we go. So now we have these fields right away in JusticeWeb. And if we've got the stars next to the ones that are required. If this gets too big, you can start making more pages, next page, etc. All right, permissions. This comes back to linking your requests to specific involvement types. So, I keep coming back to this. If I'm involved as a police officer, if I'm involved as a prosecuting attorney, what requests do I have options on? That's why I am involved as a police officer as well. So if I look at this Clark Kent case, I'm involved as a prosecuting attorney. I have these request types. If I scroll down to where I'm involved as a police officer, I only have the option to put a note for this case. I can't request audio for this case because I'm not an attorney. So notice, depending on my involvement type, the requests change. And if I come back into JustWare here, I can see if I look at, which one were we looking at? Request audio. That one's only available for prosecuting attorney. So since I'm not logged in as a prosecuting, or since I'm not involved on that case as a prosecuting attorney. So again, very, very specific. You can make it pretty granular. Scroll back up here. Request status, I don't see many people making more besides approve, reject, and queued. But if your workflow requires you to say, we want to track different rejections. So if you had like 4 different types of rejections, rejected because not with our agency, rejected because they spelled their name wrong or whatever, if you're trying to track specific approvals or rejections, you could make different reject types. So when you are approving something or rejecting something through the queue, through reporting, you could say which ones were rejected because of this specific request type. Or queue type, I should say. Yeah. Different emails based on the rejection. Exactly. And that comes back to this notification. We're running out of time. I keep talking about email notifications. You can set up notifications here. You can set them up in JusticeWeb based off of business rules. There's just, sky's the limit.
And is that going to be fixed soon, so any default mail client can be used and not just Outlook?
I guess that depends on if we ever stop being Outlook Microsoft based, which probably isn't going to happen. Just go to Outlook. There you go. Solve that problem. Yeah! I guess that's my cue, huh?